there's certain questions I have of why is 47th Street photo on 45th Street? And
is that true?
Yeah.
Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Scholars, welcome back to Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher. I'm a professional artist and master educator attempting to provide you with the best in art historical content. I've had several people submit to me videos like this where individuals have found Art 101 with Mr. Burgher playing in classrooms all around the place. If you have videos like this, send them to me, but it's awesome to see educators utilizing Art 101 with Mr. Burgher, and if you like it, follow along yourself, and I'd love to have you on board.
Okie dokie.
So today's topic, as you know because you clicked on the video, Mathew Brady, the premier photographer of the American Civil War. Today I'd like to get into the ins and the outs of the work that he did, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it.
Now, Mathew Brady is pretty easily identifiable as the photographer behind much of the Civil War photo content that we're probably familiar with. However, as an early photographer in American history and father of photojournalism, he was pretty well established as a photographer well before any of the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter in 1861. He is absolutely the most famous photographer to come out of the American Civil War, but that's not really the beginning or the end of his story. He grew up in New York around the Lake George area and learned the daguerreotype photo process from Samuel F.B. Morse, who learned directly from Louis-Jacques Mandé Daguerre and actually helped him get that photography technology exported into the United States.
I presume you're on your way to lecture at the Science Academy?
By 1844, he would open his first photography studio on Broadway in New York City. He would quickly stand out as a leader among several major photographers in the city of New York. Within 5 years, he would open a second studio in Washington, D.C. in order to have a little bit more direct access to the national political leaders, as that was very much interesting to him. During this time, he was also very instrumental in the technology advancements. You see, the daguerreotype process used metal plates, which did not allow for copies to be created. However, he was instrumental in the glass plate negative becoming the established technology moving forward by the 1850s. His leadership and influence would help this process expand throughout the country into a major trend. One of his subjects that he's really well known for is his photographs of Abraham Lincoln. He would take photographs of him for the first time in New York in 1860 when Lincoln was visiting New York for the first time. He would make lots and lots of money and sell thousands of prints of Abraham Lincoln. Side note, it was Mathew Brady's photographs of Abraham Lincoln that would influence the artwork that was on the $5 bill and the penny.
More money, more problems, Stanley. You of all people should know that. Let me ask you this. If I were...
Money.
As the Union advanced into Virginia starting July of 1861, Mathew Brady was also traveling along to capture images, but without any success. The lighting, the apertures, the shutter speeds were not capable of capturing action the way that it was necessary to create really good photos at war. It was a total loss at the Battle of First Bull Run, both for the Union and Mathew Brady. In 1862, one of his gallery managers, Alexander Gardner, had gone off to capture some really gruesome photos at Antietam. He agreed to exhibit these photos in New York at a show called The Dead of Antietam, and huge crowds came in to view these images. Now obviously, huge crowds equals considerable amount of money coming in, so they decided to tweak their approach and go back to the battlefield to capture images. He would invest in mobile darkroom studios that would go out with his assistants and they would capture photos and bring them back. However, as great a photographer as Mathew Brady was, he was also equally poor at businessman. This limiting business acumen caused huge financial troubles for Brady. He was sinking everything into capturing war-type photos and really innovating photojournalism, but at a personal loss. These troubles convinced Alexander Gardner to go off on his own and open his own studio, where he would bring on board others previously hired by Brady, including James Gibson and Timothy O'Sullivan. Now, Brady was selling war-type prints by the hundreds, but so were others. And as I kind of alluded to, this was a huge team effort. It took a lot of people to produce what was going on. Kind of like the director of a movie, Mathew Brady's name was on it, but he had lots of people working underneath him to be able to produce the photos that he was producing under his name. You know, like we might see a Quentin Tarantino movie, and Quentin Tarantino's name is on as the director or the producer or the writer or whatnot, but it takes lots and lots and lots of people to make a Quentin Tarantino movie, not just Quentin Tarantino. Just the same, it takes lots and lots of photographers and skilled workers to create these Civil War images, not just Mathew Brady, although it's Mathew Brady's name that's on it. But the troubles really set in for Mathew Brady after the war. These photos went out of fashion. People wanted to forget about the Civil War. People wanted to forgive and forget. And these images that were really selling and very popular no longer had buyers. He had captured images of battlefields, camps, towns. During this time, he was organizing and financing trips up and down the country to take photographs of key cities, but also key leaders that would include Abraham Lincoln, of course, but also Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, and lots of others. When it was all said and done, he had spent well over $1 million in 2022 dollars to create the tens of thousands of photographs that really nobody wanted to buy, as I mentioned, and so he went bankrupt. In 1875, the United States government had bought a considerable amount of the negatives and images that he still had. However, at the end, he still remained in debt. They bought these images for about $25,000, and he had invested $100,000, which, again, simple math tells you, he's still negative $75,000 or so, and so he had to come up with another way to make up for the financial loss. These images today can be found at the National Archives, but many of these negatives, which were on glass plates, were destroyed. You see, he had sold them off to a company that was manufacturing greenhouses, and they needed glass to go into the greenhouses. They bought the negative plates to go into the greenhouses that literally were left out to be destroyed by the sun and the weather in these manufactured greenhouses, because it was a lot easier to make some money back selling the glass than it was to have a complete loss. He would still continue to operate his galleries into the 1890s, but by 1895 he was preparing for a new idea. As a witness, as a photojournalist, he decided to go out on a lecture series focusing on the images that he had produced during the Civil War. And he would use these American Civil War photographs to really illustrate the stories that he was telling. However, during the planning phase, he was actually hit by a horse buggy and shattered his ankle that caused hospitalization and further issues, which actually resulted in his death on January the 15th, 1896. He passed financially broken, but in our world today, he is revered and is recognized as the most important individual for capturing these visual documents of the American Civil War, helping historians and educators tell the story of our American past. And it's certainly his legacy that generations and generations of Americans would understand what happened here. He would illustrate American history for all of us and influence us in ways that he wouldn't have even saw coming back in the mid-1800s. And despite the financial downturns, there is a social significance to the work that he had produced.
Thank you for watching that all the way to the end. Down in the description, there's all kinds of links to other videos that you might enjoy. There's lots and lots of content in there with the whole series of stuff with Art 101 with Mr. Burgher. And also don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy it. We'll see you next time. I really appreciate you. Have a good day.
No, you had to use a camera, and then you would put film in the camera, and then you would go to a photo mat. It was wonderful.